Hey, Dr. Huntley, it's
Hello.
Caroline and Patricia. And this is our workbook number 2 of the final project for Data 6500. Can you start?
Sure. So first we had to run all the first steps just to make sure that we could run our other queries. And then we had to make sure we changed this to course data warehouse so we could create our own warehouse instead of using one that already existed.
The next thing was to go into Lucidchart and just like we did in part 1, design a data warehouse layout. But the change here was making a star schema design. So instead of all the tables being connected differently, they're all dimension tables linking to a uniform course facts table in the middle. So as far as the main layout goes, there's one primary key in the course facts table followed by what is 5 foreign keys, and then the measures at the bottom of the course facts table.
And those measures are all aggregated, so they weren't in existing data, but using queries, we were able to populate those. And then on the sides, you see the dimension tables. So those are all the information that give more information to the course facts. So like they answer the who, where, why. So like in this case, the instructor dimension answers who, and the location dim answers where.
Okay, so moving into building and populating our course data warehouse. The first thing we did was attach the banner database as banner, just to make sure we were able to actually get data when we're populating when we needed it. But just to start, of course, we started with %% SQL, building our database. The first table we built was the location dim. So we drop table if exists, just to make sure there's nothing in existence with the name location dim. Created the table, inserted it with location ID as the integer primary key and location code integer not null.
Then we followed that pattern for the rest of the dimensions. So for instructor dimension, we did also the drop, the create, and then you clarify which table you're using. And then in the parentheses, you add all the different columns that you will be using. And then to further elaborate, you should define what kind of data type is going to be in that column. So in time code, you see it says integer. So it's a number. And then if you look at start time, it's a time. And then if you look further down, there should be, if you look at title and course offering dim, you see text because it's text. And if you see not null, it basically means that there needs to be information in that cell in order for the query to run.
Okay. So course offering dim or instructor dim, time dim, course offering dim, course catalog dim, those are all more or less the same. They all start with the primary key and then the remaining elements of the table. Course facts is where it gets a little more interesting. So once again, we have drop table and create table and then begin with our primary key. It follows along the same. We add in our aggregate measures, as Patricia said. So we add in class date, class duration, mins, and count meetings at the bottom, just like they are in our ERD. And then, of course, the most important part of the course facts table is our foreign keys, which will look like joins when we populate our data. So we have foreign keys of the different parts of the course facts table referencing our different dimension tables. And then that's it from that.
Yep. And then we ran that and have all the dones, which means we did it correctly.
Amazing.
And then we began to populate our database. So we use the % sign SQL once again. And now to start again with location dimension, we use a delete from function to make sure if there was any data already in that table, we would scrub it clean and then insert the new data. So we said insert into location dim, which is the table, and then the column name, which is location code. And we're selecting that from locations, which is one of the tables in banner.
Perfect. Instructor dim is more or less the exact same. Time dim is a little more interesting. We have substrings, as you can see. Substrings just helped us pick exactly what from the different thing we wanted to pull. So for example, whatever we use them in start date time and end date time, but we ended up finding when it came to just pulling the start time and end time and not the dates, we didn't really need them. So I guess they were helpful at some points, but like we didn't end up needing them at some times.
Probably interchangeable.
Yep.
We're not wrong.
And then course offerings dim is more or less the same as the other ones. Same with course catalog dim. And do you want to start course facts?
Yeah, sorry. So now we're going to populate the facts table. So we deleted all the information, inserted all the information, and then we started using the very helpful with query. So we did with meeting measures as, where we started to aggregate all the stuff we needed, which was very helpful to later use in the select clause.
So within the select clause, we selected the course offering DIM catalog ID, location ID, instructor ID, course offering DIM, course detail ID, time code, class duration, mins, which was what we pulled from our, well, this is all from our meeting measure. We grouped by our course offering D and called that all count meetings from meeting measure. And then we joined course meetings, joined course offerings, and then we joined our all of our dimension tables. We ran on, depending on if they were the same name, we would use using, and if they were different names, we would use on to connect them based on their different names. And then we ran a little select all from course facts just to make sure it all populated okay. As you can see, we get class duration in minutes, so 75 minutes for an hour and 15 class. Count of meetings, you can see there are 26 meetings for 13 weeks of twice a week. For example, this was for AC 11. And then we'll move into our useful queries.
So the first thing we did was just run a check to make sure that the database that we were using, like Banner, connected correctly, which it did because we matched the numbers with the Banner refresh. So we were set to go. And then we started to try to do more creative queries to make sure that our data was going to populate and give us the right answers. So the first one we said was, how many unique accounting classes are there? So we did select distinct count of catalog ID, title, and catalog ID. And then we used that from the course offering DIM, which was one of the dimensions. And then we used the where clause, where catalog ID was like AC, and you do the percent sign, because the percent sign means that it's any type of wild number or any type of number or name. As long as it starts with AC, it's going to populate. And then we grouped it by catalog ID to just show that there was that many classes. For example, Introduction to Financial Accounting, which is AC 0011, there was 87 times that catalog ID showed up.
And we got all of our accounting classes. Okay, our next query was how many classes are taught in each room in DSB. So we select counted course offering IDs and location codes from course facts. We joined in location DIM using location ID so that we could get the location code, which of course is the one that has the 3-letter code. Location ID is just a integer. So we joined where location code was like DSB. Just as Patricia said, we have the wildcard there so that no matter what follows, it picks up on the DSB. And we group by location code. So we can see that, for example, DSB 104 had 3,577 classes in it. One thing we were thinking about with this data was, depending on if this building was old DSB or new DSB, we see, for example, there's no rooms on the second floor, which we now know is like a main
and then
floor for class, or lower level, like our class is taught in lower level. So we were just thinking about how the data being outdated, this might not be super accurate for right now because of the building change. Okay, and then our last query was, what was Dr. Huntley teaching fall of 2018, which was the fall of our freshman year? We selected distinct instructor ID, name, course ID, title, and term from our instructor dimension. We then left joined into course facts on instructor ID. We then left joined on course offering DIM to get the course detail ID, where the name was like Huntley. Same thing, we have the wild cards so that depending on if you were in there as Chris or Christopher or whatever, Dr. Huntley was the most important part, and the term was fall of 2018, where we can see that you taught Python for business analytics and operations management. And that is our presentation.